Happy Wednesday, September 23rd. It is National Pot Pie Day. Um, I created this just because I think it's funny because you've got your today's world of chicken pot pies and you have the chicken pot pies I grew up on. I believe you could buy them four for $1. And yes, that's pretty much how they looked when they came out of the oven. Mm. All right, so enough about chicken pot pies. Maybe you can enjoy one today. We are focusing on the learning target is a history target that you can describe the political, economic, and social changes in Europe in response to the Black Death. I'm not sure, where you got to with the way that we left school because of the pandemic. So I'm going to review the Black Death with you a little bit, and we're going to look at some of the lasting effects to the governments, which is politics, to the economy, and to lifestyle, social changes. To do that, if you're in class with me today, we are going to talk about this as we're living during the COVID-19 pandemic. What changes do you predict might happen to our government? What has happened to the economy? What has happened to some of our social norms? Again, if you're in class, we're going to be talking about this. We know that the economy has declined. We know that people have lost their jobs due to the pandemic and the different restrictions that have been put in place by our governor. Um, a change that might happen to our government. What a lot of people don't understand is that. Um, It was not the president's job to determine what each state did in response to the pandemic. It was our state governor's job. Yes, we have a federal government, but each state has its own state government, and certain things are left to the state by law, and certain things are to our overall federal government. And so that may become a change, in my opinion, to where it does become a responsibility of the president or of the federal government to respond as a country to the pandemic instead of each state being given the freedom for their governors to respond the way they want. What's happened to some of our social norms? Well, already, we wear masks. We don't go out as much as we used to. We are learning this concept of social distancing, and we are at school online. So, those are some things, and maybe you can add to my list. But we're going way back in time to the Black Death. There was actually three different episodes of the bubonic plague, also known as the Black Death. This map shows you the one from 1347 to 1351. And you can see by the colors, it's kind of like the ripple effect with where it started versus how it spread. Um, and so just a map for us to look at. The key is up here where you can follow the years or represent the colors of when the outbreak happened. But this is definitely a pandemic for that time period because Europe was the world pretty much in their minds. And so this was a worldwide, for them, European worldwide disease. Okay. So if you're in class, we're actually going to watch this history teacher's video. Unfortunately, when I make videos, we can't really watch a video within a video, at least not that I'm aware of. But we will watch this in class as a background information to the Black Death and some of its effects. Okay. All right, so we also are going to look at this set of notes. If we were in class, we would put these in our interactive notebook and maybe write some things in our interactive notebook. It is broken down into the political, economic, and social norms, the changes that happened in response to the Black Death. Before we look at that, I have given you an image of the feudal system. So this was the political system before the Black Death at the time of the Middle Ages. Not sure if you learned this or not, again, with the pandemic, so I'm going to review it. So, the political system during the Middle Ages was what this image shows. So, the Pope and the church, they had absolute power. So, they're above. You can see they're not even in the hierarchy, the power hierarchy. So, they had total control. In fact, they picked the king and who the king was going to be for that area. If they did not approve of the king, then they worked on getting that king out and the king in that they approved of. So, a monarchy existed, but with the church being in control of that monarchy. These arrows indicate the relationships that happened in the feudal system. And of course, as you go down the pyramid, power decreases. As we go up, power increases, as well as wealth. Wealth increases as you go up, decreases as you go down. So the king outside of the church was the most powerful and the wealthiest. And the king had nobles or lords that they would provide money and land in a manner for them. And in response to them providing that, then the nobles and lords were loyal to that king. Monies that were made off of that land went back, most of it to the king. The nobles, lords, they recruited knights and vassals. And supported them. And in response to that, the knights and vassals were loyal to those nobles and lords, protected their lands, and any monies that were made or taken as spoils of war were passed up, most of them to the nobles and lords, who then passed it up to the kings. Okay. And then the bottom right here, the merchants, farmers, trades, and craftsmen, those are the people that lived on the land controlled by the nobles of the lords as representatives of the king. The knights and vassals offered them protection, and in response, they gave monies, products up the hierarchy as you see the arrows. Peasants and serfs were bound to the land, and it was the knights and vassals' job to protect them, but also made sure that they stayed and obeyed what they were supposed to. So the feudal system was a type of monarchy, and it is what existed prior to before the Black Death. Okay, so it's important that you know that, because a change, we're looking at changes. The Black Death killed off, over half of that population at the time. So you have a lot less people than you do during the Middle Ages. And the Black Death just killed whoever, kings died, um, church leaders died, nobles died, knights died, vassals died, merchants, farmers, tradesmen, everybody on this hierarchy, groups of people died off. So there's less people. Okay. So that in and of itself creates these smaller armies. Knights, several of them don't even have a king to fight for anymore. So they start to fight for themselves. And instead of protecting the villages, they terrorize the villages. Okay. And as I just said earlier, the church has total control over life during the Middle Ages. They pretty much told people how they were supposed to live, what they were doing that might be a sin, how that might be angering God. They blamed, sicknesses, um, um, bad things happening to you in life, like you losing your business, your house burning down, things like that, were always blamed on you sinning and that God must be angry with you. So their whole lives were focused on superstition and being afraid of doing things that would anger God, and that came from the church. Their lives also centered around church activities. You- The priests would have been the only people who could read pretty much at the time. So whatever they told them, the people believed because they had no way to prove it for themselves. So as the Black Death hit and then people start to survive it, they start to doubt the authority of the church. They start to doubt the things that the Pope and the priests are telling them about life and about God. And so the church begins to lose its absolute power in government. So we're going to see a shift there as well. Okay, some economic changes. families can't earn the money that they usually do with the death of family members. So that creates a change in families. They become poor. They may die out due to starvation, or maybe they move away to try and find new work. The labor force drops dramatically. There's not enough people to do all the work. So the people that are left are going to be able to find jobs and work to do. Okay. With less workers means that when you found a job to do, like say maybe become a cabinet maker, because all the cabinet makers in your area died due to the Black Death, you can now charge a higher price for your cabinets. There becomes a decline in trade opportunities with fewer merchant sailors, and people were so afraid of contracting the disease, kind of like in our current situation, that they were not going places and they were not willing to trade with others because they were afraid that they would get the bubonic plague. So merchants died out, sailors died out. That causes a decline in trade, plus people being afraid of getting the disease and not being willing to go out and trade. Okay. Poor farmers, they actually get to go up in this hierarchy. The king dies out, the lord and the vassals die out. They can take over the land and become landowners. Rich people have to work for themselves now. Um, they don't have anyone, to be their servants. And new industries begin. So those are all changes that happen to economies. Okay, several things change with social norms. I'm hoping this is working due to this little note here, right? All right, so social norms. I already told you people begin to question their faith and the belief in the teachings of the church. Many people turn to science for their answers instead of the church and what the church is telling them. Okay. Social distancing, way back then, people avoid contact with others for fear of getting the disease. There's more resources and less people, so their standard of living starts to increase. People become more aware of fashion and throwing parties and eating luxurious foods. Okay. Luxury food items could be grown instead of just the basic needs. So instead of just farming for what you needed every day, you could grow crops like grapes for wine and things like that and charge the prices for them. There was an increase in medical knowledge, just like we're increasing our medical knowledge about COVID-19. Once they understood the disease and where it was coming from, they could increase their medical knowledge about the body and how it reacts to it. And then that's a ripple effect of learning more things in medicine. New inventions, new innovations like the printing press and the spinning jenny are created, and death becomes a focus in art, literature, songs, and drama. So, those are some changes that definitely happened in response to the Black Death. You will have a copy of the student notes. Okay. All right. So, if you're in class, we have been talking about this. If you are watching this teaching video, then you're not talking about it, but you're learning about it. And so, what I want you to do is go to Canvas, and there is a quick write assignment. And I want you to look back over the student notes of the changes of the political, economic, and social changes that I just went over with you in the student notes. And I want you to describe two of those effects that you still see in our world today. So, effects that happened hundreds of years ago because of the Black Death that you still see in our world today. So, you're just going to write about two of them. It's called a quick write. Okay. Make sure you use sentence structure and that you do the assignment there in Canvas. All right. I will see you in class.